Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Officer, there's no need for all this. There's no need for all this.
It's okay. Zoe, it's okay. Zoe, it's okay. It's okay.
At exactly 9:42 p.m., flashing police lights cut through the silence of a quiet street. A man is forced to the ground, handcuffed, surrounded by officers shouting orders. But there's one problem. They've arrested the wrong man. As the cuffs tighten, the suspect calmly looks up and says 5 words that instantly change everything. "I'm an FBI agent." The officers laugh it off until moments later when the truth explodes across their radios. Within minutes, the FBI director is furious, demanding answers, as the humiliated officers realize they've just detained a federal agent in the middle of an operation. Now the agent is warning them, "I'll see you in federal court." And Internal Affairs is about to open a case that could end several careers. The timestamp in the lower left corner of the parking garage security footage reads 11:47 p.m., Thursday, October 3rd. The location is the underground level of the Meridian office complex in downtown Hartwell, Georgia, a mid-sized city of roughly 280,000 people, the kind of place where everyone assumes they know what's happening until they discover they never did. The footage is grainy but adequate. A man in a dark jacket and charcoal slacks walks briskly toward a gray sedan. He carries a leather messenger bag over one shoulder and moves with the deliberate, unhurried confidence of someone who has spent years learning not to appear rushed, even when the situation demands it. He reaches the car door. He opens it. That is when the lights appear. 3 unmarked vehicles, 2 black Chevrolet Tahoes, and 1 silver Ford Interceptor converge from 3 directions simultaneously. 6 men exit the vehicles rapidly. They're wearing civilian clothes, no visible insignia, no body cameras recording. 4 of them draw weapons. The man near the sedan raises both hands immediately. He does not run. He does not resist. He turns slowly, palms forward, and says something inaudible on the footage. Within 40 seconds, he is on the ground, hands zip-tied behind his back and being pushed toward the rear of one of the Tahoes. He has not read his rights. There is no warrant presented. There is no identification shown. What the 6 men do not know, what will take them exactly 19 minutes to discover, and what will consume the next 4 months of their professional lives, is that the man they have just placed in zip ties is Special Agent in Charge Marcus Elliott Vance, a 16-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, currently embedded in one of the most sensitive undercover operations in the Southeast United States. They don't know this yet, but they will. Marcus Vance was born in 1979 in Augusta, Georgia, the second of 3 children raised by a schoolteacher mother and a retired Army logistics sergeant. Those who knew him in childhood described the same quality repeatedly: an unusual patience, a boy who watched before he spoke, who listened longer than most adults were comfortable with. He graduated from the University of Georgia in 2001 with a degree in criminal justice and a minor in behavioral psychology. He was recruited by the FBI at 24, completed training at Quantico with distinction, and spent his first 4 years working organized crime in the Atlanta field office. By 2012, he had been promoted twice and transferred to Hartwell's Regional Organized Crime Task Force, a joint operation coordinating between state agencies and federal investigators. By October 2024, Marcus Vance had been living a fabricated identity for 11 months. His cover name was Daniel Mercer. In that identity, he was a mid-level logistics contractor with vague criminal associations and a reputation for discretion. The target of the operation, a narcotics distribution network moving fentanyl-laced product through commercial freight routes, trusted Daniel Mercer enough to have included him in 2 significant meetings. Vance was, according to case files later reviewed by the DOJ's Office of Professional Responsibility, approximately 6 weeks away from a controlled delivery that would have yielded arrests of 7 individuals, including 2 who operated at the organizational level. He carried federal credentials in a concealed wallet inside that messenger bag. He also wore, at all times during the operation, a secondary identification card laminated inside the lining of that same bag, standard protocol for deep cover operatives in hostile environments. The card was never checked. The 6 men who arrested Marcus Vance were members of the Hartwell Metropolitan Police Department's Special Enforcement Unit, commonly referred to internally as the SEU. This unit operated with significant autonomy within the department. Its formation in 2019 had been championed by then Deputy Chief Raymond Collins, who argued that traditional vice and narcotics units were too slow and too siloed to respond to the city's shifting criminal landscape. What Collins did not publicly acknowledge, and what investigators would spend considerable time documenting, was that the SEU had developed a pattern of conduct that Internal Affairs had flagged on 2 occasions since 2021, neither flag resulting in meaningful discipline. The unit was led, at the time of the arrest, by Sergeant Dwayne Pruett, a 17-year department veteran known for results. Known more specifically for arrests. The SEU had recorded the highest arrest volume of any specialized unit in the department for 3 consecutive years. What the numbers obscured was a troubling ratio of charges that did not survive preliminary hearings, cases that collapsed not because the perpetrators were innocent, but because the evidence was gathered in ways that did not withstand judicial scrutiny. On the evening of October 3rd, the SEU had received a tip through an unregistered informant, a source Pruett had used before, whose reliability had never been formally evaluated, that a man matching Vance's physical description and driving a gray sedan would be moving a quantity of narcotics through the Meridian parking structure. No cross-referencing was done with the state's law enforcement activity database, which would have flagged the location as proximate to an active federal operation. No call was made to the Hartwell field office. No warrant was sought, because under Pruett's operational approach, the tip was treated as grounds for an investigatory stop, a characterization that, as federal prosecutors would later argue, bore no legal relationship to what actually occurred. They converged to the parking garage without authorization, without coordination, and without the basic verification step that every law enforcement training manual in the country teaches before the first week of field work is complete. The drive from the parking garage to the SEU's temporary holding space, a leased commercial space used for informal detentions prior to formal booking, itself a practice of questionable legality, takes 8 minutes. During those 8 minutes, Marcus Vance, seated with his wrists bound behind him, says the same thing 3 times. I am a federal law enforcement officer. My identification is in the messenger bag. You need to stop and verify before this goes any further. Sergeant Pruett, seated in the front passenger seat, does not turn around. He tells Vance to remain quiet. At 12:04 a.m., they arrive at the facility. Vance is brought inside and placed in a chair. The messenger bag is set on the table across the room. At 12:09 a.m., Vance says, "Open the bag. There is a federal ID card. There is also a laminated card inside the lining. Read the card. Make 1 phone call. That is all I am asking you to do." At 12:11 a.m., one of the officers, later identified in testimony as Officer Craig Tolliver, opens the messenger bag. He removes the wallet. He looks at the federal credentials. He looks at the shield. He reads the name. He takes it to Pruett. There is a pause that, according to Tolliver's account, lasted for approximately 45 seconds, during which Pruett looked at the credentials without speaking. At 12:13 a.m., Marcus Vance is uncuffed. At 12:14 a.m., Vance stands, straightens his jacket, retrieves his bag, and looks at the room, at Pruett, at Tolliver, at the 4 other officers standing in various postures of discomfort. He says, in a voice that multiple witnesses later described as entirely level, "You have just disrupted an active federal operation that has been running for 11 months. My cover identity may be compromised. You conducted an unlawful detention of a federal officer without warrant, without coordination, and without verification. Every one of you will be hearing from the United States Attorney's Office. I will see you in federal court." He walks to the door. He stops. He turns back. "And someone in this room needs to call your chain of command right now. Not in an hour. Now." He leaves. At 12:31 a.m., October 4th, Marcus Vance places a call to the duty officer at the FBI's Hartwell field office. That call is logged, recorded, and flagged as a priority incident within 11 minutes of its conclusion. By 2:15 a.m., the special agent in charge of the Atlanta Division, Vance's direct superior, has been woken at home and briefed. By 4 a.m., the incident report has reached the desk of the FBI's Deputy Director of Operations in Washington, D.C. By 7:30 a.m., the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is personally informed. What happens next is not standard procedure. It is the kind of response that occurs when an institution feels not merely challenged, but threatened at its foundation. The director, a man known in Washington circles for a disciplined, methodical temperament, does not wait for the formal liaison process. He places a direct call to the chief of the Hartwell Metropolitan Police Department at 8:02 a.m. The contents of that call are not recorded in any publicly released document. However, 3 individuals briefed on the conversation subsequently described it to investigators using virtually identical language: controlled fury. The director's position was unambiguous. The detention of a federal officer during an active undercover operation was not merely a procedural error. It was, depending on what internal review revealed about the SEU's conduct and knowledge, potentially a federal crime. At minimum, it was an institutional failure that had placed an agent's life in danger and may have destroyed nearly a year of investigative work at significant taxpayer expense. He wanted answers, he wanted accountability, and he wanted it understood that the FBI would not be deferring to the Hartwell Police Department's timeline on either. The FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility and the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division opened parallel investigations within 72 hours of the incident. What they found as they worked backward through the SEU's operational history was not a single night of recklessness, it was a pattern. Investigators documented at least 11 instances over 3 years in which SEU officers had conducted detentions or entries without proper documentation. In 6 of those instances, individuals had been held in the commercial facility that Vance himself had been brought to, a location that appeared nowhere in official HMPD records as an authorized detention site. The informant whose tip had triggered the October 3rd operation was identified. He had a documented history of providing unreliable information for personal benefit and had been flagged by a separate narcotics investigator as an individual with potential ties to the very network the SEU claimed to be disrupting. The question of whether the tip had been manufactured, whether Vance had been deliberately identified and reported to the SEU by someone within the narcotics network who had become suspicious of Daniel Mercer, became the subject of a separate criminal inquiry. Sergeant Pruett retained private counsel within 48 hours of the incident. So did 2 other members of the unit. Tolliver, notably, did not. He contacted the FBI directly and requested a proffer agreement. What he told investigators during those sessions formed a significant portion of the evidentiary record. The Hartwell Metropolitan Police Department's Internal Affairs Division opened its own review within a week, a review that, given the FBI's parallel inquiry and the DOJ's involvement, carried an unusual weight of external scrutiny. Department leadership was aware that any appearance of self-protective findings would accelerate FBI intervention. The IA review confirmed the use of the unauthorized detention facility. It confirmed the absence of a warrant. It confirmed that no attempt had been made to verify Vance's identity before physical restraint was applied. And it confirmed that at least one officer, Tolliver's testimony was central here, had heard Vance identify himself as a federal agent before the zip ties were applied. This last finding changed the legal character of the incident substantially. An unlawful detention of an unidentified individual is a serious matter. An unlawful detention of an individual who has clearly and verbally identified himself as a federal officer, who has requested verification, who has been denied that opportunity, and who has been physically restrained regardless, moves into territory that federal prosecutors described in formal charging documents as willful interference with a federal law enforcement operation. Sergeant Dwayne Pruett was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. 3 additional officers were suspended. The chief of the Hartwell Metropolitan Police Department issued a public statement acknowledging that the department's protocols had not been followed and that the matter was being treated with the utmost seriousness. He also announced that the SEU would be immediately suspended as an operational unit pending full review. Federal charges were filed with Sergeant Pruett and 2 other officers for obstruction of a federal investigation and unlawful detention under color of law. Pruett's case proceeded to trial. After 11 days of testimony, including Vance's own measured account from the stand, delivered with the same quiet precision with which prosecutors noted he had conducted himself in the parking garage, the jury deliberated for 2 days. Dwayne Pruett was convicted on 2 of 3 counts. He was sentenced to 28 months in federal prison and permanently barred from law enforcement. His 2 co-defendants accepted plea agreements and received probationary sentences with lifetime bans from law enforcement service. The informant was charged separately in connection with the narcotics investigation and pleaded guilty. Officer Tolliver, whose cooperation was pivotal, received prosecutorial consideration. He resigned from the department and was not charged federally. The FBI's undercover operation, case designation withheld, was formally closed. The nearly 11 months of work under Vance's cover did not yield the arrests anticipated. 2 of the 7 targets had gone silent in the days following October 3rd, suggesting, as investigators had feared, that Vance's cover had been partially compromised before the arrest, and that the SEU operation accelerated an exposure already underway. A separate investigation was opened. Marcus Vance was reassigned to a supervisory role in the Atlanta field office. He declined all media requests. He has not spoken publicly about the events of October 3rd and the months that followed.